Have you ever wondered what would happen if you were stopped by law enforcement and asked to show your ID and you refused to show it? People, this decision that you may think is harmless could lead to serious legal consequences. So let's set the stage here. ID checks have become a normal part of our everyday life. Whether it's getting into a nightclub, catching a flight, buying alcohol, or even checking into a hotel, showing your ID feels second nature. But what if you decided to challenge that norm? Now, in the above situations, you simply would be denied access to the club, denied access to the flight, denied the ability to purchase the alcohol, or you may be denied the ability to check into your hotel. You'll be sent on your way. However, if it's the police, you could end up in jail facing serious criminal charges. So, today I'm going to give a hypothetical. We did a lot of these in law school, but they apply to the real world. It gives a scenario where this could actually happen. So in this case, let's say we're dealing with a gentleman by the name of Alex. Now, Alex is a free spirit, someone who believes in personal freedom and hates the idea of being asked for an ID. In fact, Alex hates any government compulsion to do anything he shouldn't, in his opinion, be required to do. So picture this. Alex is lounging around in the park on the grass, soaking up the sun, when a couple of officers walk up. And the officers say, "Sir, can we see your ID?" Alex responds, "Why?" "Sir, we have reports of drug use in this park and you fit the description." Alex, being who he is, stands his ground saying, "No, I do not have to show you anything. I'm innocent." "Sir, show us your ID or you're going to jail." "I'm not showing you. You got the wrong person." In this situation, Alex can and likely will be arrested for refusing to show his ID. So let's talk about the Louisiana laws that apply to Alex's situation. For Alex and anyone like Alex, let's look at Louisiana state laws as well as constitutional laws that will come into play. What laws are Alex in danger of violating? The first one is Louisiana Code of Criminal Procedure, Article 215.1. Temporary questioning of persons in public places, frisk and search for weapons. A law enforcement officer may stop a person in a public place who he reasonably suspects is committing, has committed, or is about to commit an offense, and may demand of him his name and an explanation of his actions. So let's talk about this. Alex, in our example, he's in a park. There's a report that he was involved in criminal activity. That gives the officers ground to demand his name, demand his address. Now, an explanation of his actions does not mean he gives up his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. We're going to talk about that more later, but he still maintains his right against self-incrimination. If they ask for his name, he has to give it. If they ask for his address, he has to give it. If they ask, "What are you doing? Where have you been? Have you committed a crime?" he can plead the fifth. He has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. The officer has the right to ask. Alex has the right to refuse to explain his actions because he cannot be compelled to be a witness against himself. That is a constitutional right that all Americans have. So let's see what else this statute says. Part B, When a law enforcement officer has stopped a person for questioning pursuant to this article and reasonably suspects that he is in danger, he may frisk the outer clothing of such person for a weapon. If the law enforcement officer reasonably suspects the person possesses a dangerous weapon, he may search the person. Part C. If the law enforcement officer finds a dangerous weapon, he may take it until the completion of the questioning, at which time he shall return it if lawfully possessed, or arrest the person. If you're somewhere you have a right to be, and you have a gun that you have a right to own, you legally purchased it, it's not stolen, it doesn't have obliterated serial numbers, you're not a convicted felon, you're not on probation, you're not fighting a charge of domestic violence, you're not out on bond. If there's no prohibition against you having that weapon, the officer can retrieve it from you temporarily, but as soon as the questioning is over, he or she must return your lawfully owned firearm. During detention of an alleged violator of any provision of the motor vehicle laws of this state, an officer may not detain a motorist for a period of time longer than reasonably necessary to complete the investigation of the violation and issuance of a citation for the violation, absent reasonable suspicion of additional criminal activity. However, nothing herein shall prohibit a peace officer from compelling or instructing the motorist to comply with administrative or other legal requirements of Title 32 or Title 47. Title 32 is where you'll find all the traffic laws in Louisiana. One of the things you're required to do if you're in a motor vehicle and pulled over for whatever reason, the officer can demand your driver's license. If you're driving a vehicle in the state of Louisiana, you're required to have a driver's license on you, a physical driver's license, or you could have LA Wallet, proof of insurance, proof of registration. If he or she asks for these things, you're required to produce them. Same thing holds true, though, with respect to your Fifth Amendment right. If let's say they're investigating an armed robbery or a drive-by shooting or a hitting, you have a right to decline being interrogated by the officer. You can simply say, sir or ma'am, I'm going to invoke my Fifth Amendment. I don't have anything to say to you without the presence of a lawyer, and leave it at that. So now that we know the officers have a right to do this, let's look at a crime you could be charged with for not complying with the officer's request. Resisting an officer. Louisiana Revised Statute Title 14108. All right, so what is resisting an officer? Resisting an officer is the intentional interference with, opposition, or resistance to, or obstruction of an individual acting in his official capacity and authorized by law to make a lawful arrest, lawful detention, or seizure of property, or to serve any lawful process or court order when the offender knows or has reason to know that the person arresting, detaining, or seizing the property or serving the process is acting in his official capacity. So what does that mean? All right, we're going to break it down a little bit. If you're being detained and you refuse to comply, people may believe I wasn't resisting, I just didn't want to give him my ID. But what does the law say? The law says intentional interference. By not giving your ID, you're interfering with a right that the officer has. Opposition or resistance or obstruction. Oftentimes in situations like this, members of the public get charged with resisting an officer or obstruction of justice because you're being asked to do and comply with requirements that under our laws you are required to comply with. The statute helps us because it defines obstruction. The phrase obstruction of, as used herein, shall, in addition to the common meaning, signification, and connotation mean the following. So what does obstruction mean under the law? With respect to our scenario with Alex, the law actually defines obstruction of, and that's going to be under Part B1C. The law defines obstruction of with respect to a scenario we've been discussing concerning Alex. And what does the law say? Refusal by the arrested or detained party to give his name and make his identity known to the arresting or detaining officer, or providing false information regarding the identity of such party to the officer. So there you have it, folks. You can be charged with resisting arrest by refusing to provide your name, address, and technically an explanation of your actions, not forgetting that you still have your Fifth Amendment right. And if you're in a car, you have to provide your driver's license, proof of insurance, proof of registration, things that you're required to provide under Title 32, which is where all the traffic laws in Louisiana are found. So briefly, the last thing I want to touch on, which I feel is imperative that we talk about, is the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Now, I'm going to do another video where I'm going to break down the Fifth Amendment piece by piece, because there's actually 5 parts to this Fifth Amendment that you should know. If there's nothing else you ever remember in the law, you should remember your Fifth Amendment rights. So I'm going to do a video dedicated solely to that. But for the purposes of Alex's scenario, we're going to focus on the one that is applicable. In the Fifth Amendment, with respect to Alex, it says, no person shall, and we're going to jump down, be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself. All right, so what does that mean? You don't have to answer questions that could incriminate you or land you in jail. You have a Fifth Amendment right to shut up. I'm going to tell you, in all likelihood, that's what you should do, at least until you have a lawyer there with you. To sum it all up, folks, Alex should have simply complied with the request to identify himself and provide his address. If the officers continue to question him as to his actions, they do have a right to ask that. He could always invoke his Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this law, especially if you were unaware of it, that you are required to provide ID if you're in a vehicle and identify yourself and provide your address if you're, let's say, walking in a park. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that law, if you think it's fair or not. Some states require it. There are states that do not require you to identify yourself to law enforcement. And I'd like to hear if you've ever been in a situation, you, a family member, or a friend have had an encounter with law enforcement concerning this situation where you were stopped. They attempted to question, they attempted to ID you. I'd love to hear how that went. Finally, if you found the video useful, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more intriguing content like this. If you know someone who needs to see this video, copy the link and send it to them so they can watch it. Stay tuned, people. Take care. Be safe.